You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Knezick.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I am Tom Knezick, and today we are buzzing into episode 63 of the plant podcast that will report you for plant theft. So, I was actually surprised by their answer that they didn't know a lot of people were taking plants. I guess I thought less of people.
And I don't know, because we're in a small town here,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone kind of knows us. We don't really notice any theft here. Not saying that it may not occur, but we don't really notice it. Like if a plug ends up missing out of 3 million plugs, you may not notice it. But when I worked at the Connor Pile Company, which is Star Roses, like I would go in on Sundays sometimes just to check, and there would be people parked at the side of the road walking across a field to steal roses and walking back. Like you'd catch them with four in their hands. It's like, whoa. It's amazing, like the theft. That was like, even to get to the entrance, you had to go through woods. There was a gate. Like we had an instance where someone backed the gate, like the truck through the gate, and filled up with stuff all throughout the nursery. Like a ton of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people don't recognize that these are things that have a value, and especially when they're on private property, sometimes they're being raised for that value.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't just go taking even just seeds. You shouldn't just go take seeds. Make sure you have permission first before you do any of that, because it is a serious thing. One of the things that I always laugh at, so New Jersey's famous for, I think every state says they're famous for their sweet corn, but we, being from New Jersey, know that New Jersey is famous for its sweet corn.
Yes.
And so a lot of people say, well, I'm going to game the system, and that farm field that I'm driving by, I'm just going to go grab corn out of there, not realizing that isn't sweet corn. It's usually raised for animal feed or other uses. And you see people pulled over and they're picking corn off of the farmer's field, and they are stealing from that farmer. It's theft, but you kind of know that they're going to feel it later when they actually eat that corn. So
it's kind of makes it worthwhile.
So sometimes you warn them, sometimes you don't. So
it's sad to see the amount of theft that happens when it comes to plants, but just do the right thing. It's if you're doing it all for the right reasons, you're not the ones that are stealing. So
but we have a tradition to uphold now. We've had a few quick episodes in a row. So the Buzz was intended to be a shorter form. I don't want to say short form, but a shorter form than our general discussions. And our listener and former guest Rick McCoy reminded me of that the other day when he came to visit, because we always say, oh yeah, this will be a quick one, and then it's like an hour and a half later.
Although
still going
on episode 59 we kept it to an hour. 61 we were like an hour 15,
and that's what I'm saying. We're doing a good job.
All right,
so we're gonna keep it going, and we're gonna get right into the plants that we're vibing with this week in That's Hot.
What's hot?
Would you like to go? Sure.
My plant this week is my noted favorite plant on this podcast. It held out 2 weeks for me so I could choose it, and that is Liatris spicata, which is how I pronounce it. When I just started looking up the pronunciation keys, just on all the different resources I kind of gather some information from, things like wildflower.org and Missouri Botanical Garden and Jersey Friendly Yards, you have the pronunciation keys, and some of them, they're all different.
Yeah, I know. And
so
that's
some of it's like, I say Liatris spicata, but then some say Liatris.
Yeah.
I can't even say the second way they pronounced it,
but I say Liatris as well, whether it be right or wrong.
Yeah, but also known, the common name is dense blazing star. Sometimes people just call it blazing star, but there are a variety of Liatris species. It's a facultative species. It likes moist soils. It's not going to be in super wet areas. It's kind of like that, like wetland fringe is where you're going to find it, where the soil is still wet, but it's not considered technically a wetland. The height specs on this were all over the place. When I typically see it, it's somewhere between like 2 and 4 feet tall. If I saw a 4 foot tall one, I would say that's a really big Liatris. The listing says they can get up to like 6 feet tall. I've never seen that, but I guess it's somewhere is really happy it likes that. It likes full sun. It's tall, upright, kind of forms a clump. The leaves, one of my favorite parts of it, are the leaves kind of look like almost carex-ish, how they form that clump and then fall or fan out, similar to carexes do. And then the flowers are tubular. It's basically a long stalk, and it's got all these like purplish, pinkish flowers on there, and they're really fuzzy looking. So why I like it just as a garden plant is it just provides completely different texture than almost anything else. You see, even cardinal flower and blue lobelia, they aren't like this because this has that fuzziness to it, where cardinal flower and blue lobelia don't. But it's native to 26 states. And another one of my favorite parts about this plant is I'm going to back up. Great for pollinators, and another reason I like it is it's great for pollinator photos because you have that flower stalk is vertical.
Yes,
they're landing on it vertical, and you get them at a different angle than you would if you were taking a picture of them on a coneflower or eupatorium, where they're now, I guess, their feet are facing the ground. On a Liatris, they're going to be facing the horizon. So but another thing I really like about this is, if you notice, especially in the fall and winter, right at the base there's just like a hard brown thing. That's, some people call it a bulb, but it's actually a corm, and that kind of is like the nucleus for all the energy for that plant. So a lot of people with a lot of perennials, they'll die back over the winter. They aren't evergreen. They'll die back, and you won't have a lot of above ground life, if any above ground life. Liatris, basically the whole thing dies back to that corm. But in most perennials, the roots stay alive. So if you were to dig up, the roots are still white and look great. And this isn't just blazing star, but a lot of the Liatris species, the roots actually die back too. And it sucks back in all that energy of that corm. The roots die back and degrade, and it'll send out new roots each year, which is really interesting for like compacted soils, because it just keeps opening up that soil over and over, year after year. So it's one of the few plants that I know does that, and it was Claudia West taught me that. So
awesome. I think duck potato does that as well. It dies back to the tuber, you know, and then and regoes. But that's a great cut flower as well.
It really is.
And it's in all its glory right now. It's a great choice. So I went with spotted horsemint this week, Monarda punctata. It is an upland species. What made me think of it was, we have a bed of ferns outside of our office, and they kind of volunteered themselves into that bed, which was nice to see. The bed had gotten disturbed a little bit, and there were a few plants coming up in there. Upland plant, 2 to 3 foot tall, dry site, with yellow and pink tubular flowers flecked with purple, occurring in whorls, common in old fields. Like I said, it's volunteering in our beds. It's a pollinator superstar. It really is. In our seed fields, when that block is blooming, it's amazing. You can hear it before you see it if you're walking into it. And it is aromatic, kind of a little bit like Greek oregano, if you know what that smells like. And it is native to 33 states. So I think it's to me, it's not as showy as some of the other Monardas. Like, the description sounds phenomenal. Maybe it's because I'm colorblind. Like, it is a pretty flower, but I don't think it looks as
it's another striking. Unique flower.
Yeah.
It's when you think of like a flower as like wildflowers, this isn't something what you're gonna picture something looking like. No. It's really unique structure wise.
Yeah.
And going to, I'm not a scientist or an entomologist, but going towards the insect side of things, the pollinator side of things, when I would walk around our seed blocks and see all the flowers in bloom, well, you go to the echinacea and you see a lot of bumblebees and a lot of like more common species. You go to the Monarda punctata, and it was all like weird stuff. Like bright blue metallic wasps and all this like golden. There's another wasp that kills caterpillars. That's really cool. Golden something wasp. I can't remember, but just really unique pollinators on that species as well. It's not your typical things.
It's unique looking. It's a little bit different than other Monarda. It services a lot of pollinators. It's a great plant, and that's definitely one to add to your garden. If you don't have both of these, you should be adding all the ones every week that we mentioned.
Yeah,
don't you agree?
If you live in the Mid-Atlantic and it's native to your area and you have the right conditions for it, then you should be adding that.
33 states.
And most of those for Liatris, I should have mentioned, most of those states are east of the Mississippi.
Yeah, I think with the Monarda punctata it goes out to Texas. I want to say right around there. So all right, we're keeping it compact.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to move on to this week's botany-based current events. And of course, we always make it a competition. Someone's got to be a winner. Let's get into this or that.
You can get with this, or you can get with that.
So we do have a winner because there has to be a winner, and the winner this week is Tom.
I'm on a roll, right?
I won last. I think I won last week, actually.
Well,
you had two. I just kind of, and all right. I've been debating this. I've been debating it since I put it together. I really have, but I haven't complained in a while. And you know what? I feel bad even saying something. So you won 8-3, like pretty handily. It wasn't even close the whole time. And the articles were, you had the opinion piece on saving New York's wild spaces. I had the research on aspirin seed coating for help. And typically we both want to win, but we're both presenting great articles. And I still think yours is a great article. This one really hurt me because I really felt that, to me, on my side, I feel that New York City's always been very progressive about saving their open spaces, and they've invested millions and millions of dollars over 10 years, or over the years, not 10 years, but they've invested a lot of money into that infrastructure, and they're continually doing it. So I kind of feel like it was an opinion piece, and I appreciate the fact that it was in a big paper for a lot of people to see, to put it on people's minds, and for other places to do that. But I just kind of felt like, well, they're already doing that. Like they're already saving it. They're progressive. This was something to help all restoration future, like this, some scientific discovery using something natural to do it. And it kind of hurt. But the other thing was too, that hurt was I felt that we didn't really get a lot of votes in general.
I was surprised. But we also didn't do the double post and
I
all
did.
that.
I did.
Oh,
I
okay.
reshared
I
it. Yeah, I even reshared it. So I was kind of hoping resharing it would get a couple more votes, but it wasn't even close. Like our listeners,
you would have just lost like 21-3.
Yeah, I know. I was trying, but and it's really not a complaint. I think it's a wonderful.
I think
article.
It's more of like a take pity on me, plea for votes is what it really sounds like.
It was. If you read the post, you'll know it was a blatant plea for votes for me. But I don't know. It's the first one where I kind of felt like, we always feel that our article should win. This one, I really felt my article should win. I was really a little.
Sometimes you just gotta play the people, friend.
Yeah.
You take, like this week, I took another risk. It's something a little different. It's out there, but I don't want to spoil it yet. So I'm going to let you go first with your article. Okay.
Yeah. I had to choose between two, and I wasn't sure which one to go with. And ultimately, I didn't play to the audience. I picked one that I liked. But
it sounds really, really interesting. I haven't read the article, but just reading your description of it now, it sounds really cool.
I thought it was interesting, and it's something I hope I see more of in the future. So the name of the article is "This Man Documented 5,000 Trees Being Killed by Vines in Tacoma Park," which is in Washington, D.C. And the article is by Jacob Fenston on NPR.org. And as always, I've highlighted just a few paragraphs that will sum it up very nicely, which I will read. So during the sultry summer months in the DC region, it's easy to spot invasive vines climbing high into the tree canopy along roadways, smothering native plants and trees, and giving the Mid-Atlantic's temperate deciduous forest a tropical jungle vibe. A new report makes a case that freeing trees from these vine invaders is an essential tool to fight climate change. Jesse Buff with the Chesapeake Climate Action Network authored the study after cataloging the vines present in every single city block in Tacoma Park, Maryland. He did it on foot, walking the city's 36 miles of roadway. I walked probably quite a bit more than that, says Buff. I had to keep going back and forth in many cases, surveying the front and backs of houses. In all, Buff counted nearly 5,000 trees affected by invasive vines. That's not counting trees with just a few tendrils creeping up the trunk. The trees he counted as affected are so threatened they're likely to be killed by the vines within the next 5 to 7 years. The in-depth study of Tacoma Park's vines provides a fine-grained snapshot of a stubborn regional problem. The Mid-Atlantic's climate, with a lengthy warm season, provides perfect conditions for a number of fast-growing, sun-loving vines native to Asia. These include porcelain berry, Chinese wisteria, Japanese honeysuckle, winter creeper, milominate, and oriental bittersweet. One of the most common and destructive English ivy is native to Europe. So that sums it up pretty good, and that was a really in-depth going over 36 miles, 5,000 trees, could either sound like not that many or a lot. To me, that's a lot when you think of invasive struggling out and canopy that will be opened up that will allow more invasives to take hold. So it's if he's saying they're going to lose these trees in 5 to 7 years and they're being taken out by invasives, that's only going to open up the light for more invasives. And that's pretty, to me, that is, first of all, I felt it was interesting that it was done by a climate change organization. So that protecting native plants is a climate change issue as well as just choking out a native plant issue. So I would like to see more areas do this. We know invasives are a problem, but when you start to quantify it like that, it puts it in a whole different perspective. And I would like to see more of that. And hopefully this article brings more of that to light.
And unfortunately, I guess in a way, is that something you can take to city councils, town councils, those kind of places, and then present it. And if that number doesn't go far enough, and this is why I said, unfortunately, you can even put a dollar figure on that. Now that once you have the data to figure out, okay, this is the number of trees, well, then you can figure out what the value of those trees are. Say, well, this is actually costing us X amount of dollars in issues. And that's a big way to make a difference. But that is an amazing amount of trees. And I'd wonder what we're seeing just in our own area.
It's funny because they've done that kind of thing. Never happens with trees. I've seen them do it with pavement. Like we do this much in road repair. When you have impervious pavement, this much in road repairs, you have to do these things for water runoff and sewage. But if you used impervious pavement, it's this much up front, but you're saving this much over 20 years. Like there's been tons of research and monetization that has gone into that for stormwater, but not really the plants itself. Like, hey, if we did this much invasive plant removal, it costs this much, but we're saving this canopy that you can't really replace. You can't even put a dollar amount on it. Maybe that's why that's a little more difficult to do. But
no, it's interesting. Just that's one town's perspective. What's happening like in the rest of Maryland, Virginia, the DMV area? What's happening in the entire the Mid-Atlantic? Like it's only going to get, that number is only going to get bigger the further you spread out.
Exactly. So, but that's my article. I'm looking at the title of yours, and I hadn't seen this one or read it, so I'm really curious.
And there's a lot going on in this article. So there was so much going on, in fact, that I almost said I can't do this. This is too hard to present. But at the end of the day, I said I can't not present it. So
all right, awesome.
Went with it.
I can't wait to hear it.
And it's titled "Meet the Philly Kid Who Helped Solve the Strange Case of a Missing Bee and a Rare Pennsylvania Plant." And this was by Tom Averill, and it came out in the Philadelphia Inquirer about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
It starts out saying, "For all anyone knows, the scrappy plants with thimble-sized white flowers have been sprouting from the rocky Pennsylvania cliffs for ages. Yet no one noticed them until a few years ago when a Bucknell University botanist and colleagues were rappelling down a 350-foot cliff face in, oh my gosh, Shikellamy State Park." That I just saw it, and I'm like, I should have practiced that name beforehand because I had no idea. So it continues and says, the identity of the rare species, Heuchera alba, was determined in 21st century fashion after a group posted a photo on Twitter. And then it started, when I read that, it started to hit me. I've actually heard this story before. This was happened in 2017 or 2016. But the professor, Dr. Chris Martin of Bucknell University, snapped a photo of what he thought was Heuchera americana, which is a fairly common plant, put it on Twitter, and got a reply on Twitter saying, nope, that's not it, from Ryan Folk, who is then at the Florida Museum of Natural History, and said it looked more like Heuchera alba, and which is an imperiled species and really only known to exist in really tiny populations in Virginia and West Virginia on rocky cliffsides like this. They were able to positively identify it as Heuchera alba, and then found numerous other areas when they started saying, oh, if it grows on rocky cliffs, let's look at more rocky cliffs. And as they went to expand their search, they found it. I think they picked out like 24 locations and found it on 20 of them. But there was more. They also found on return trips that there was a really unusual bee that was hovering over the petals. And after consulting insect experts, they learned it was called the alum root cellophane bee. And it was named that because it wraps its underground nest in a plasticky film that resembles cellophane.
Okay.
No one had reported seeing this bee in the state for over a century.
Wow.
Which was really just, so now they found two things that weren't known to exist really in that state, at least in the last 100 years. And that's where our Philly kid comes in. And I'm going to probably mispronounce this name too, but Aeneas Barnes, who used to go to the Community College of Philadelphia and then transferred to Bucknell University to finish out her undergraduate work, was enrolled at Bucknell and wanted to go into botany. And someone said, hey, you should hook up with Dr. Martin. And they got together, and he says, hey, you need to find me more of these plants and more of these bees. So she went to those 24 sites and actually was the one that was finding a lot of this stuff with another student. And so they were driving even as far as like 200 miles in a day and scoping out different spots along Susquehanna River. And they found 20 instances of that plant and then 6 instances of the bee as they traveled around. Now, the other component of this story is, well, only 4% of the Bucknell students are Black.
Okay.
And Aeneas Barnes is also a Black student. Well, there's Chris Martin's colleague, and one of his assistants is a woman named Tanisha Williams, and she's a postdoctoral fellow. And she was actually the person who founded Black Botanist Week just last year.
Oh, okay.
And so this was like really just worlds colliding here to put something like all the right people in the right place to make this discovery and do it with a really minority group of not just the U.S. population, but horticulture and botany as on a whole nother level. And then just as a side note, Black Botany Week is the second Black Botany Week is scheduled for next week, starting July 26th to the 31st. Now, friend, we actually have a unique tie to this story.
Oh,
that as I read it, I'm like, I know, I've mentioned in the beginning, I know about this story. I've heard about this plant and the bee before, but it just wasn't clicking. And I was like, oh, I heard Dr. Martin speak about this at the New Jersey Plant Society meetings.
Oh, okay.
It might have been 3 or 4 years ago. And, but we're actually tied even further because Dr. Martin is a Rutgers graduate from Cook College and was actually one of my dad's students in his dendrology classes. And
really,
so I'm like, oh
wow,
yeah, that's why I know.
That's pretty cool.
Met him, and my dad and him hadn't seen each other in a long time. But Dr. Martin is a really, really awesome guy. That presentation was awesome because one of the things he really focused on is, hey, if we want to get more people engaged in botany, we need to present it in a 21st century way. And that means, like he mentioned with the finding the plant or identifying the plant, you're putting stuff on Twitter. He noticed that most of the wildlife stuff that was happening, or I shouldn't say wildlife, but natural YouTube channels all focused on animals. So he made one that focused on plants, which is called, it's a YouTube series called Plants Are Cool Too. And so yeah, there's just a lot going on in this story that's really, really awesome. You have a student from Philadelphia who's a person of color going to a campus that is predominantly white, in the middle of Pennsylvania, and discovering really cool plants. And it's just there's a lot of really awesome things that are happening in this story.
There really
So-
is. That's such a great story, especially like discovering plants that are in peril and think of what we didn't know about that bee that now maybe at the National Bee Laboratory, what they'll be able to learn. It's just, you're right. If I were voting, I'd vote for you this week.
Oh, thank you, Fran.
This-
I'm sure a lot of people
And without
feel the same.
feeling-
I would vote for myself
Without
too.
feeling bitter about it or complaining about it, I would vote
No,
for you.
it's a really good, and as hard as it was to parse all that out, the article is super long, but to parse all that out and make it kind of cohesive, I feel for the Philadelphia Inquirer author who had to make that flow as well, because there's so many things happening that are really really awesome. So
Awesome.
yeah, really cool story.
2 great articles.
So you guys listening at home, it's your turn. If you aren't a member of the Facebook group, the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, join it, because that's the only way you can vote for which article you like better. We have some people trying to vote on Twitter.
You had another
vote
vote on Twitter. I had to say sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it
doesn't
doesn't
count.
work that way. Gotta be in the Facebook group. And I know some people aren't on Facebook, so you can always let us know which one you like better, because it does.
We like
it means a
hearing it.
lot to us when we hear that kind of stuff.
But
so.
join the Facebook group, vote. We'd like to. The votes were down a little bit this weekend, and you even got the post up like timely. Like sometimes I know we don't get the post up right away, and we don't get as many votes. I wasn't taking a shot at you. You're looking at me
I was like,
taking a shot
I
at-
thought you did the post because I was
Oh wait,
away.
did I? Oh, I did. I got
And
the.
so if you were
all right.
wondering why it was timely, it's because Fran did it.
I got the post up timely. Oh, you're right. I didn't even think about that. But make sure you vote. It means a lot to us, and it's nice. We always love getting all the feedback. So, all right. So we're less than a half an hour. We'll keep it moving.
We're moving along.
All right. So next segment is something that Tom started a couple weeks ago, and we're going to keep it rolling with listener shout outs.
Listener shout out.
So this one to me is kind of interesting because who the person is. This person works at a local establishment that we frequent in town. I always assume, like, I know who she is, and when you go somewhere all the time and we have interactions with work, I had just assumed that she knew who I was, but apparently not. So, which is fine. It's like one of those things when you're dealing with someone, you just assume.
Oh yeah.
But she didn't. So I was making a purchase, and this is Erin Kelly, who right before she handed me my receipt, she pulled it back, and then she looked at it and she's like, "Oh, I thought that was you. I listened to the podcast and I'm really enjoying it." So thank you for letting us know. It's funny. Once I was put in that situation, it was amazing how non-talkative I became like really bashful. I was like, "Oh, yeah, thank you. We really enjoyed doing it. Thank you." And it was, I kind of left, but I really appreciate you taking the time to letting us know that you listen and that you enjoy it. That means a lot to us. So, and just I know while we're talking about listener shout outs, we got 2 more 5-star reviews. But thank you to Wild Quinine, who said that they were learning a lot from listening.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Awesome. And we can't go an episode without talking about food. So Aaron works at a place right across town here called Piccolissimo Pizza, which has been, I remember going there as a kid.
Yeah.
So it's been there.
It's changed
for a long
locations,
time.
but it's been there for a long time.
But I've had numerous friends, not just one, but numerous friends, even ones from upstate New York, from the Buffalo area, say that they have the best buffalo chicken pizza that you'll ever get.
That's what I was picking up. Actually, I was getting a buffalo chicken pizza, and my son Darian, him and his friends all swear that that's the best buffalo chicken pizza out there.
I haven't had better, and it's not my favorite. Well, from there, it's one of my favorite pieces. But like if I go other places, I usually don't get it because it's subpar. But from there, it's like it's next level.
Phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. So, I love their Sicilian pie. They do a really good Sicilian pie, and that's something that people nail or they're horrible at it. Yeah. So,
and what I always end up getting there is, and this is actually a regional thing because we have a lot of places you go, you'll get like penne alla vodka. It seems like around here, maybe just south of Trenton, you get vodka rigatoni.
Yeah.
Instead, it's same dish, it's just different pasta sizes basically. But that's always really good. And then the eggplant parmesan is different than what we get almost anywhere else because it's like sliced like super paper thin.
Yeah, their
and
eggplant
just,
parm
like 30 pieces stacked up. It's awesome.
We tend to go there for pizza. They do a taco pizza that again is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But the stressful thing for me on that one is that it is topped with fresh lettuce. So to me, it's not one you can.
Yeah, you can't
you're
take it home and reheat it.
Yeah, if you get that
then.
pie, you're eating that pie. You
Yeah.
better make sure there's enough people that like it. But everyone loves it.
Oh yeah.
It's just I feel very stressed because I'm like, this pie has to get eaten now.
You
What?
stressed? I can't believe
It always
that.
turns into a competition. So me and Darian, we got the buffalo chicken pie. So I was only planning on eating 2 slices. We each had 2 slices. And then he's like, I'm having a 3rd slice. I'm like, really? I'm like full. He goes, so am I, but this pizza's so good. How can you not enjoy it? So we each had 3 slices. And then I'm like, we have to have the last slice. And he goes, why? And I'm like, because it's not going to taste as good tomorrow as it tastes right now.
I'll actually argue with you on that because I think that slice in particular is better reheated.
Really? All right.
It's something about it just gives a little bit more. It's a little tightened up a little bit more. It's a little crispier. Oh man, that's really good reheated.
Guess what I'm getting on my way home tonight?
There
Buffalo chicken pizza. I will let you know tomorrow how I feel about that. So moving on, we have multiple questions.
Oh, but I have to give my listener a shout out first, and that is someone who wrote to us on our email address, which I always forget we have, but and that was Rocky Donovan, who works for the Talbot County Soil Conservation District, and was just writing in all the different episodes that he's really liked, and a connection that we have, which is a customer of ours and longtime friend of the nurseries and my dad's, Griff and ours as well. Griff Evans from ER&M, who I don't know if he listens or not, but we'll see him next week, so we'll be able to talk to him then. But he was saying he really liked working with Griff. We like working with Griff, and it's a shame he lives so far away. We'd hang out with him a lot more.
Yeah, and it was nice to see how passionate Rocky is about a lot of the things we talk about in their professional career and personal life. So it was just really nice to get that feedback on multiple episodes. It was really nice, and we were able to steer Rocky in the direction of some other episodes that we thought would be good, and actually listens to Darren's Growing with Nature as well.
He was really interested in a lot of like the native edibles. And which is the ball's kind of like sitting here. I got to push it to get it rolling, but we're hopefully going to have a real discussion about that and a little bit more gourmet, I guess is the word I'll put it. So you don't just have to have something. And actually, speaking about native edibles, I'll have a treat for you probably next week. It might be for the next buzz I'll bring in.
Awesome.
But I'm getting started on it this weekend, so it takes about 5 to 7 days.
Speaking of Darren, since I'm already complaining this episode, I'm gonna continue complaining. Darren, if you're listening, I know you're a busy man, but ever since you started your own podcast, you've become less active in our Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. So pick up your game. Come back. Don't forget your roots. Don't forget your roots. We all miss you. So, but it's nice to hear all the commentaries and how well his podcast is doing. And it's he's become very, very busy. So I'm really happy. Couldn't happen to a nice person. So now should we move on?
Yeah, let's
Sorry,
do our
I didn't
questions.
mean to. That's okay. two buzz episodes in a row. I tried to skip my response. Was it the same? Was it the same segment too?
Same segment, yeah.
Same segment. We do one and then I'm done. All right.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
So it's kind of like Beetlejuice. I think we went 3 episodes and mentioned Saul's name each episode that he hadn't called in. So he's back and he's okay. So he's
alive, which I wouldn't say he's okay.
Well, let's hear what Saul had to check in on.
No, honey, not now. I'm on the radio with the boys. Roots down. I put the roots down. And how we gonna do it? Do it. Roots down. I love the Beastie Boys. Didn't you, fellas? I was sad that young man, he passed away, and then they don't tour anymore. And I thought, well, if you thought about it, Cam, and I know you know these things, but when Frank Sinatra died, what happened? Frank Sinatra Jr. went out on tour. I believe he still is to this day. And I thought for the Beastie Boys, they could go out as the Beastie Junior, kind of like a Hardee's when you go and you get the Hardee's Junior. Anyway, it's a choice, and I thought they could make it. But that's not why I called. Thomas, Mr. English, but I trust that you are doing well. You're so knowledgeable, you and Pam. I'm always in your debt, except for the money that Pam owes me. Now, I am, as you know, transforming the estate to complete native. I had my landscaper out over the week, Texas Timmy Two Tongues, and he brought a ditch witch with him, and it scared me bad, and I fell, of course, into the ditch, and I hurt my head pipe, and I had to wear a collarbone for a while. But your audience was very nice, the Facebook, and they sent me many greetings. One current theme, and I've received this from many people, is, Saul, what the heck is your problem? And another one that just said, what is wrong with you? So I take that as an expression of love and concern. I saved some of my favorites here. Saul, what's your problem? Saul, get better soon. God help us. And then another one, hey, Saul, it's Bud from prison. I'm out now. Oh, I don't think that one's too good. Anyway, guys, my question, and we all have the backyard and the barbecue, and I'm going to have one next year, and perhaps we could have some of your listeners come. But I'm wondering, I have made in the past a dandelion wine, but I don't particularly want to use dandelions because I prefer a native. And guys, could you speak on any plant, a bush, a tree bush, if you would, that has a fruit that I could make a wine from and serve for my guests? Okay? Thank you, men. It's your friend Saul from gardening in New Jersey, the Garden State.
That might have been the best call we've ever gotten. And he did have a question there. I thought it was just a ramble.
No, I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, where is this going? Like from Beastie Boys, about R.I.P. MCA, Adam Yauch. But and second, before I forget, I'm no deadbeat. I don't owe Saul money. I don't owe anyone money. So if I have debt,
he sounded pretty convicted that
I pay my debts. I pay my debts, but what he said, he hurt his head pipe and he had to wear a collarbone. I think everyone's always wearing a collarbone.
Yeah, but I'm glad that our listeners are tending to Saul and wishing him well. And
that was good. But I don't have a wine, but I did just learn, unfortunately, just past its prime. We mentioned elderflower liqueur. I did learn how to make elderflower liqueur, which is relatively simple. I think they were saying take a quart-sized container, fill it with vodka, and then add 20 blooms into that and let it sit for about a week or two, and then pull the blooms out and add sugar to taste, and you have elderflower liqueur. So that may be a very nice summery, spring to summer type drink to serve, like something to sip on in the garden.
And I kind of led into this, but I didn't even know it. My surprise for you is I guess I'm gonna have to give it away here for Saul, but I'm gonna make a black cherry cordial. Out of and I just happened to look up and I'm like, what can I do with? I have some black cherries along a hedgerow by my house. I'm like, what can I do with these? Because I know you got to be able to do something, and then of course it ended up being alcoholic. But yeah, you basically just you pick the black cherries off the tree, and they're more bitter than what you're used to, and they're really tiny. So when you're thinking of black cherries versus when you get black cherries, you got the big hunks of cherry in there. Not the same thing. These are really quite small. I'm trying to think of like another berry that it's similar to, but maybe like pinky nail size, I guess.
Almost, I saw someone confusing it online with black chokeberry.
Yes, yeah, that happened the other day. So they're very small, but you need, for the recipe I had, you need about 5 cups, which
It's a lot.
I shouldn't have a problem getting, but
Yeah.
I could see a lot of other people having a problem getting if you don't have like the Bounty right next to your house. You mix it with some water and some sugar, and you let it ferment for a couple days, and then you keep tasting. Just make sure it's at the right concentration for you. And after about a week, it's done.
Awesome.
And there's a whole recipe online. When I actually make it, I'll have to post the recipe with some pictures and of how it turned out, and maybe I'll get a video of Fran's reaction to drinking it.
Oh,
So
maybe we could do it on the
You can
bus.
actually drink this, right? This is not.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
okay.
No. I
Fran's
told you
allergic to
because
enough things that
I brought up black cherry soda. So
Yeah,
I've actually had black cherry hard liquor. Like,
And that's actually how it started. Was I was looking up how to make black cherry Wishniak, and there's some mix it with vodka, do all this stuff. And I'm like, I didn't realize it was an alcoholic thing. And then I looked up something else and it told me how to make this black cherry cordial. And I'm like, that's easy enough. I already have a big fermenting jar, and it's bubbly apparently.
Yeah,
It's like carbonated
You can
in a
get
way.
a 6-pack. I can't remember. It's a company that does a lot of the hard drinks.
Mhm.
It's like Not Your Dad's or something. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh yeah, there's like the Not Your Dad's root beer.
Yeah,
and,
they
yep,
do Not Your Dad's black cherry.
That's got to be pretty good.
It is. If you can pick that one up, that one's worth trying. So, but we do have a second call, not to get too sidetracked. So Saul, that gives Saul a couple great things I'm looking for.
Mhm.
We can try this one maybe during the next buzz.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the goal.
All right, awesome. So I want to play. We had a brand new caller calling.
Hi, my name is Brandon Chase. I live in upstate New York, and there is a park that is right next to my apartment complex that I've been wanting to fix up. I want to make it into a big native plant garden, but I'm a student. I don't have a lot of money. It's also a public park, so I don't want to break any laws by doing anything, like planting anything I'm not allowed to. So where do I start? Where also can I get inexpensive plants to plant there? I want, originally, many years ago, I guess it was a world-renowned alpine garden, and it does not look like that at all anymore. So any ideas would be great. Thank you, and have a good day.
That's a great phone call, Brandon. Thank you for calling in. So I just want to start off. Always the most important thing is don't go rogue. Make sure you get permission from the park before you start tinkering, because we don't want to see anyone getting locked up for.
And because I've even heard of people who were just collecting litter in the park. They went into the wooded areas in parks near them, and they just started picking up trash and taking it home with them, and they actually got in trouble. And like the people complained to the park rangers that these people were just doing whatever the hell they wanted, and from then on they started to ask permission. But they thought they were doing something really good, and some people, I think if they really understood what they're doing, would have realized it was something really good, but they didn't like how they were doing it and complained. A lot of the parks, which I didn't realize up until a couple, probably months ago, really have friends groups. And they'll like some of the ones that come to mind are Friends of High School Park, which I think we referenced last week.
Yeah, Friends of the Wissahickon.
Friends of Penn Treaty Park. There's all these friends groups for these parks that help with volunteering to take care of the parks. So first, see if your park has one of those.
And if not, see about how to go about starting one of those. So you can get people to help you do it. But besides that, you can also see if there's other groups in the area that are willing to help with that park and get involved, which you can pull your resources.
I know, like in New Jersey, we have chapters of our Native Plant Society. So there's the New Jersey Native Plant Society, but then you have the Rancocas chapter, and you have the Highlands chapter, and you have all these different chapters across the state. From Pennsylvania, right? I'm forgetting. But so see if the Pennsylvania Native Plant Society has chapter, or New York, upstate New York. See if New York has Wild Ones chapters or Native Plant Society chapters, and find a local one, and see if there's other people in your area who would want to do it with you. More hands make lighter work, that's for sure. And then from the plant perspective, the best way I could think of, if you want inexpensive plant material, is to well, again, get permission from even the park itself. If they have native plant populations on the premises, get permission to collect seed from those areas, and then you can either just scatter it in the new areas or bring it home and germinate some seedlings. If they don't have native plants or you can't get access there, ask about other parks nearby, or even if it's a landowner and you just happen to see some native plants along a wild area along the road, go up and ask them and see if you're able to collect seed off of that. That's a really inexpensive way to do it, because even the containers that you use to germinate the seedlings in, you don't need much more than like a paper bag or a plastic bag, and then some old bottles and egg cartons work great. Because then you can use little cells like that, and then you can even just cut them out and plant the whole thing. You don't have to so yeah, all the little plastic containers, you don't need something fancy as far as a pot goes. You can do it really bare bones with stuff you just have around town.
You can repurpose a lot of things and do it really inexpensively, and the main thing is that we've talked about on numerous episodes is have a plan. Start small, don't try to go too big. Make sure you're removing, if it's invasives, and they allow you to start with a small area, that you're removing the invasives from that area. Have a plan of what's going in, and follow through on that plan. But just do small steps. You don't have to go big. Small because more than likely, if it's out of control, you or your group is going to be doing maintenance on that area as well. So don't bite off more than you can chew, and start off small and make a difference that way. And then hopefully, once a difference can be seen, more and more people will be apt to help. But definitely just start off by contacting the park and see what can be done, and go from there. And if you have more questions, call back in, and hopefully some of our listeners will share on the Facebook group as well.
Another thing, once you have a group, is you look up some of these organizations, even beyond the native plant societies. Look up things like the Xerces Society and your Audubon groups and those kind of places, because one, they often have like cheaper, inexpensive signage, and signage goes a long way into getting people to adopt that space and think of it as something beneficial. A lot of times you just have if you had a weedy mess and people walk by it and there's no sign, they're like, oh, that doesn't look that great. But you have a sign that says, oh, this is pollinator habitat, this is bird habitat. Then they're like, oh, this is doing something. So yeah, it might not look like a formal garden, but it's doing something beneficial, and that's really good. And also they'll have some programs sometimes where they will help you get plant material or grant dollars to start these projects.
Xerces gave away, was it 50 pollinator kits this spring that we partnered with to supply plant material, and they provided signage and the plant material for a pollinator garden. So, and that's great ways to check with these organizations, see what programs they have running, check with your local NRCS. There may be ways and grants for you to get plant material that you didn't know about.
But it's a great idea, because there's a lot of people who they live in apartments, they live in cities, and they don't have ways. They're really interested in native plants, they're really interested in helping the environment and wildlife, but they don't have the means to, property wise. This is a great way to do it, is donate your time to your local parks and help them become those spaces, because it doesn't just benefit you, then it benefits everyone.
Exactly. So awesome. Do we have a topic this week?
Yes, we do. Really we were brainstorming yesterday, and we're like, what are we going to talk about? And we didn't want to go topicless again. So and having first Mount Cuba Center and then Bowman's Hill on, we said, what are some other really awesome places to go see native plants? And so we brainstormed, and obviously we're somewhat biased because we're both from New Jersey, central New Jersey. So the places we're going tend to be in the mid-Atlantic. And this is where our listeners come in, because we want you guys to let us know, either through the group or through email, the places you like to see this stuff, and places you like to experience native plants and see them in just in the wild or in cultivated places. So
this is definitely going to be a Facebook group conversation, so make sure you join so you can be a part of it. But you can join in on any social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you choose. So You know, the start off, like you said, Mount Cuba Center, we talked extensively about that. We also talked about Bowman's Hill, but one that
And well, we should probably say where they are too. Mount Cuba Center is in northeastern or
Delaware.
northern Delaware. There isn't
Yeah.
really a northeastern
Yes.
northwestern Delaware. It's kind of just northern Delaware. And really cool place. Mostly cultivated, or so I thought until we talked to Nate and realized how many natural areas
Yeah.
that you can now go hike through and walk the trails through. But that's a great place to not only see these cultivated gardens and kind of picture, okay, this is what'll happen if I'm using native plants and some native cultivars and want to make it look formal versus I want to see how stuff looks in a natural setting and maybe I want to replicate a natural setting. So if you're in the southeastern PA, Delaware, southern New Jersey, even down in Maryland area, that's a nice little day trip where you can go and see some great demonstrations of how to use native plants.
Yeah, and Bowman's Hill is just outside of New Hope, Pennsylvania, which is along the Delaware River. There's a lot of great attractions there, along with the Wildflower Center, because you have Bowman's Tower, you have Washington's Crossing State Park on both the Pennsylvania side and the New Jersey side, and you're just outside of New Hope, which is a great small town. There's great wineries and breweries and food there. You can easily spend more than a day in that area. But you know, given their protected acres where you can see land in Pennsylvania that you will never see natural like that probably again there. It's one of the few protected places. So, but one of the first places I thought of when we were talking about this was Sadler's Woods, which is in Haddon Heights, New Jersey. And it's one of the last few, I can't remember how many acres it is, but old growth forests. There's trees 13 feet in diameter in those woods. And I feel bad because I didn't research this off the top of my head, but it was originally owned by a former slave whose last name was Sadler. I can't remember the first name. And when he willed it, he wanted to make sure that no timber was ever cut on that land. The sad part about it, and it's just outside of Philadelphia as well, but the sad part about it is it's so like built up around it. There's a school on one side, there's a shopping center on another side, there's a major roadway on one side. It's completely surrounded, so there's not a lot of understory left. There's a lot of deer, that type of thing. So, but it's, man, to walk these woods and see trees of this to this magnitude and know how long that they've been there is pretty phenomenal. And the group at Sadler's Woods protecting it and raising, they do a really cool Halloween walkthrough where they do carved pumpkins. It's a pretty awesome place.
Yeah. Another place that came to mind, which I haven't spent enough time up there, but is the Great Swamp. And that's a national wildlife refuge in northern New Jersey, kind of near Bernardsville.
I have never been there,
but they have some really, really cool trails. A lot of invasive pressure that they actively combat with like a lot of other places on our list too. But that's a really cool place because it's got a variety of different areas. Like they have a big swamp, so you're going to see a lot of wetland plants that you wouldn't see in a lot of other areas as well. But but a bunch of different hiking trails up there. It's someplace I always forget about when my wife and I say, hey, we want to go on a hike or a walk someplace. I just don't think about going up that far. I'm more thinking south and going to the Pine Barrens, but we're gonna have to go up there again soon.
Yeah, I've never been there.
And they have a really nice like education center there too that has a whole programming list. That's why I was up there one day, is they had a program that was going on. I went to that. But really cool place up there.
To me, Agatha and I both love going to the Sauerland Mountains. Baldpate Mountain is a wonderful view, and again, that's on the Jersey side, just outside of Washington's Crossing State Park. So that's another area you can meet if you're hitting Bowman's Hill. But it's just a different topography than what you expect. It's rocky. It's more Piedmont. It's a really interesting heritage to it, and there's a lot of great trails. And there's so many organizations, Sauerlands Conservancy, Friends of Hopewell Valley Open Space, DNR Greenway. All of these are right there in that area helping to protect those trails and that natural space. So and
Yeah.
they've done a wonderful job with that.
Yeah, and they also hold a lot of events. I know Sauerland's Conservancy just had something a week or two ago at Brick Farm Tavern, which is a really awesome restaurant. One of the best restaurants in the state of New Jersey is kind of tucked away on an old farm in the Sauerland Mountains.
Yeah.
And they had an event there, but they have like a bike ride and a arts festival. I think there's a lot of stuff that they do that gets you to that area
They do
for
a
more
music
than
festival.
just walking around.
Awesome.
So another one somewhat in that area too is Duke Farms, which was episode number 2.
Yeah.
Going way back. They have done a great job of, again, fencing off areas and kind of keeping the deer out, so you can see what these landscapes would look like with no to minimal deer pressure.
And that wasn't really, while it was still under Doris Duke, that wasn't, I think, the original vision. It was more formal gardens with conservatories, and then they really have done it. The Great Meadow there is phenomenal. And there's some great cool things you can discover while you're there. You can easily spend a day, bring your bicycle, you can take a tram through, or you can ride or walk through, but it's a great place.
Yeah, so no, that's a really cool place because you see the history of it, and they have some non-native plants like in the orchid greenhouse as well. So there's a little bit of stuff for everyone. Great place to walk around. Great place to bring kids if they're in strollers or if they're in little bikes, those kind of things. It's a really, really neat place to take a trip.
I agree. So I really enjoyed. And I saw very little, but Agatha and I, we have the nursery has a house up in the Adirondacks, and we were only up there for a couple of days, but we did go to Saratoga Spa State Park, which has natural occurring geysers, which was pretty awesome. So that's not something you get to see on the East Coast, just anywhere. So to be able to go see a naturally occurring geyser and walk some of the natural lands at the state park was pretty
and
phenomenal.
they have some cool native plants there. I remember seeing white wood aster, and I believe it was stiff stem goldenrod.
Oh, nice.
Or blue stem goldenrod. I forget. Sawadega acacia is the one I saw.
Okay.
I forget what the common name of it is, but I saw that on that trip, and some invasive plants as well. But it was a really cool hike. They have an old dam that's up past that geyser that we walked to. But the whole park itself, and they have a whole concert venue, so that's a cool place to go, just kind of get away and walk around.
And I hope you saw it, because I don't know how to describe it. When you walk past the geyser, there's like a wall of like a rock wall, but it's just like
all the
mineral water,
the mineral coming down, and just kind of built up over time. It's really, really cool. But
awesome.
Another place you can drink water from naturally occurring springs. Some of it's good, some of it's not. It's some of it is very carbonated and very sodium rich, I guess is the way to put it. But no, really, really unique place going to Saratoga State Park. But why I put the Adirondacks on there was you have all these really, like, the geological history of it is really interesting, because you have these bogs that have formed where you have naturally occurring peat, and even on our nursery up there, or our property up there, there's a like anomaly that happens where I guess it happens where beavers would dam up and then form ponds. The moss that was there would end up, or I'm trying to think, I don't know the exact plants that would happen to, but basically it would float up. The anaerobic conditions would form a gas layer, and would float the what had been the ground level up to the surface. So you have these floating islands. And I thought, when we were kids and we acquired that property, my parents acquired it, and we would go up there, we're like, wow, there's these floating islands. That's really, really cool. And you could literally swim underneath these things if you wanted to. We were too scared, but you could. And but then when I was in school up there, I learned, oh, this is something that happens. It didn't just happen here. This happens in a lot of places. That's one of the things that happens in that area. So you had like pitcher plants and cranberries and woolgrass, and there's all kinds of stuff that's growing out in these really unique habitats that form out there. And then you have the mountains, and you'll have, if you hike the high peaks, you have the actual like naturally occurring timberlines and stuff where you have just changes in the flora due to elevation. There's a lot of stuff going on there that you just don't get in many other places along the East Coast. Definitely not in New Jersey.
No, it's pretty awesome to see, and it's pretty pristine as well.
Yeah,
So,
and going back to New Jersey, we have the New Jersey Pine Barrens, which you have Batstow, Whitespog. Fran, you went on Pinelands Adventures trip last year.
I did. The kayaking we did was phenomenal, and it was one of those days where we didn't, we were with a group, but it was spaced out enough where we didn't see people all day, until the very end. And it's, it was, you see cranberries, you see cardinal flower. There was just so many unique things. We saw a lot of snakes that day. It was just really cool, with that big a preserve, and everyone kind of taking care of it. Even the drive there are all on back dirt roads getting to where the kayak launch is. So it was pretty awesome.
So, and through Pinelands Adventures or the Pinelands Preservation Alliance, which are conjoined in a way, they have like naturalist trips and horticultural, not horticultural, but botany trips where you can actually just go and focus on the plants. You can do kayak trips or canoe trips where the botany side of things is kind of a side quest for you. So there's a lot going on there. It's a great place, even if you're not from the area, to go and explore. If you're into nature, that's an awesome place to go.
That's a great one. I know on the list you have Longwood Gardens, and when people think of gardens, kind of like Mount Cuba, you think of the manicured gardens, but they did install a meadow. I don't know how long ago it was.
It was within the last decade, I'm pretty sure.
It wasn't always there, but it's more of a more recent thing. Like, you can get the best of both worlds. You can that the Brandywine Valley's such a beautiful area anyway, but you can enjoy the native meadows plus the formal gardens and the conservatory. And there's so many great things. The Brandywine Battlefield is right down the road. Kennett Square, which is the mushroom capital of the world.
The Brandywine Conservancy's there, and I know they had do a lot of focus on native plants as well.
The Brandywine River Museum, which houses a lot of Wyeth family, NC Wyeth and Andrew Wyeth, who lived in that area. I think they went to New England in the summer and they stayed in the Brandywine Valley in the winter, if I remember correctly. But there's a lot of interesting history in that area as well. And Longwood Gardens, whether it's native plants or not, is something for everyone to see anyway.
Yeah, but that meadow is really cool because they have some paths carved out into it, and it's just on like a rolling hillside. And so anytime, well, I don't want to say anytime you go, if you go in the winter, it's not going to look like much unless you know what a wintertime meadow should look like. But if you go in the late spring, summer, like fall, it's just glowing with color. And it's something whenever we would go, I would always make a point to at least walk past if we didn't walk in. I actually like being up that high vantage point, and you can kind of see the whole thing rolling, and you see people walking around, but you see all the different colors, and you can know what it is just even that distance, because that's what should be blooming then.
You used to be a member there, actually.
Yeah, we were a member for a year. That was my wife's birthday present. We had a year-long membership, and it's just far enough. We didn't go as much as I would have liked to, but we went once a season, and it was definitely worth it.
And their Christmas displays, top notch.
A couple last ones just that we'll roll through quickly is and also local ones. You have the Burlington County Park System, which was episode 4, 5. It was an early episode.
We talked about Crystal Lake.
We had Jen Balava, who's the naturalist for Burlington County Parks, and the idea was to have her on to say, hey, COVID just locked down. Here's some things you can do by enjoying nature. And then they shut down those state and county parks like the day before we were going to record. But they put a big emphasis on using native plant material in a lot of the areas there. Mercer Meadows, who we haven't had on the podcast, but they put in a big meadow, and that's a part of the Mercer County Park System.
And I have not seen that yet.
And that's just a big meadow with paths carved into it that they installed in a fairly suburban area. We talked about Millennium Park in Chicago, which obviously isn't all native, but they do have a native focus in some areas of the park.
I've been to Millennium Park, but it's been quite some time and I don't remember. That was prior to me working here. So
that was I had a business trip there, and we were actually staying outside of Chicago on the McDonald's campus of all things. And then I had a little bit of time before my flight, or a lot of time before my flight. So I like went down with my carry-on bag and walked around Millennium Park by myself for a couple hours. They were warming up for a concert, and saw the Bean or whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then walked over to some of the native gardens that were there. And,
awesome.
That was one of the places. This is right after I started here full time. It was evident because it was like, oh, it was like a double bloom echinacea next to a probably another cultivar of echinacea, but a more standard looking echinacea purpurea. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's no pollinators on this one, but this one is swarming with them. It was really cool to see that up close.
And Chicagoland Arboretum introduced a lot of those echinaceas, so I can understand why they were there. But you were only blocks away from the original Giordano's deep dish.
I didn't have time to eat. I literally had time to walk around for like an hour and a half.
Okay.
And
if
and it was like at like 2:30 or something like that. So I'm like, it's in between lunch and dinner. I'm not gonna.
I'm questioning your priorities.
My carry-on luggage broke halfway through my walk, so then I couldn't throw the shoulder strap on anymore. And then the last one is Temple Arboretum, which I've only been to. I was giving a presentation there, so I was only there in the dark, but just looking at pictures and then talking to Kathy Salisbury again. I can't remember what episode it is, but a couple months ago, it was it's another place. I just need to go back and see it.
Yeah. And not on the list, I wanted to mention too, Tyler Arboretum, which is, I get confused. Which university is that? Because I get confused with Swarthmore's, because you have the Morris Arboretum also. So I kind of get them confused.
I think Morris Arboretum is UPenn.
Okay. So Tyler Arboretum, I think, is Swarthmore, I want to say. So, but they were the recipients of the 1,300 seedlings that we had provided for the display at the Philadelphia Flower Show this year. So they have natural areas that they're continually adding to. And that's another 1,200 to 1,300 trees, native trees that they're putting in there. So.
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about some places we wanted to go. Fran, you were mentioning you wanted to go to Yellowstone.
I've been to Yellowstone, actually.
You've been to Yellowstone.
I want to go to Yosemite. I've been to Yellowstone.
There's a lot of those national parks out west that for years I've wanted to go to. I got to go to Yellowstone as a kid, but like, again, you don't take as much out of it from a natural perspective. When you're that young.
And that's why it's worth revisiting. So we would love to hear some of our listeners' favorite places to visit. So make sure when we post on social media, you chime in, because we want to know other areas of the country. We're becoming traveling men.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's a little harder for you. What I am now that my house is almost sold, I'm going to have a little more disposable income to do a little more traveling.
But it's become one of my favorite parts of going to places really around the world, is seeing the natural habitats, and you literally have a phone in your pocket that is like the key to a lot of this. And even places when we were in Europe for our honeymoon, when we were in Italy, I'm taking pictures of plants because I don't know where they are. And we didn't have the service plan while we were away from the house. So I'd get back to the apartment and hook up the Wi-Fi, and I'd identify everything that I saw. And I'm like, okay, this is a non-native here. Or this is the native stuff this year. So it's really cool to do that kind of stuff when you go to a lot of these areas, even if you don't know the plant material that's native to the Southwest or Northwest or other places not near you. You have a phone in your pocket and you can figure it out relatively quickly.
Yeah. Like I've been through the botanical gardens on Barbados. That was pretty awesome. And at the time, I didn't even have the appreciation for it then that I would have for it now. But so we're about an hour and 10 minutes.
All right. So
you want to do a pod deck?
Yeah, let's do a pod deck and then we'll wrap it up.
My secret during the credits is going to be a quick one. This one. I'll keep it short. I'm trying to pick one that's going to be short and easy.
Well, you can't pick too much.
No, it says 3 things I wish I had done differently. Maybe we could just do one thing.
Yeah.
And keep it industry related.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I just put that right back in the deck. So yeah. So one thing you would have done differently in the industry.
Let's see. Man, there's so many things I would have done differently.
I think, when anything else, sometimes when I came into the native plant side of the industry, I didn't have a background in native plants, so you come into it as more of a business approach than a lifestyle approach, and it's still a business. We talk about that all the time. You have to be profitable, but early on, I didn't have the same acceptance that I have now, that cultivated over 15 years of working here to get to where, it's all steps in your growth. So early on, I maybe didn't have the same appreciation doing what I do now. And I don't know how I could have done it differently, because it's growth. You kind of have to learn to crawl and then learn to walk. And I think that's all natural progressions. But I think early on in my career, I wish I could have handled things a little differently, just because I have a whole different appreciation and approach today than I had 15 years ago for it. So that's, I don't know how I would have done it differently though, because I think it's all that natural.
Yeah. And so mine, I feel the same way. I wish I had more of an appreciation for what we were doing before I actually did.
Yeah.
But in addition, I wish I knew how much of this was actually connected when even growing up. Like I grew up with this nursery, and always knew that the nursery was doing really incredible things by supplying native plants to natural habitats. But I didn't see the importance of natural habitats outside of really like stormwater and all that, and like flood control, those kind of things. It was still the native plants go here, and but they're not for at home. But I guess the big thing I would change, I would say we should have started this podcast 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I've been a podcast fan for over a decade, or about a decade. I guess that's when they really started to pick up.
Yeah.
But, it was mostly just because some online outlets I was following started podcasts. I'm like, well, I why not listen to it? And then I fell in love with the format. And then as I started to realize, oh yeah, if you were interested in something, look up and see if there's a podcast about it. And that's a great way to, So I always saw like the power in that brand, but I never thought about us doing a podcast. It was always, other people do a podcast, and hey, we have something cool to offer. Maybe we can be a guest on a different podcast. And so, which is tough to do. Like we're both like humble enough in a way that it's like, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, you should have me on your podcast.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, like, I'd be lying if I said I didn't like go and seek out some of these people at conferences to talk to them so I could kind of demonstrate, hey, maybe I would be a good guest because of our conversation.
I've been saying for a long time, I want to be a guest on someone else's podcast. Yeah. I've been asked for one podcast, but it wasn't industry related, and it hasn't materialized yet. I was asked to be part of an episode for a true crime podcast, which would be very cool, but I would really like to be a guest on an industry related podcast. Especially now knowing what I know now. But I agree. I agree. I'm sorry.
And it's not necessarily just from us getting our name out there. It's more so I've learned so much, and I've gained so much of an appreciation for all these facets. Like I said, when I started working here, I didn't realize how interconnected everything was, and how, these plants are great for stormwater. They're great for restorations, but those restorations are also great for a lot of wildlife, whether you like to hunt or you like to bird watch or you like insects or you like all this different stuff, or fish. It's all great they're great for everything. And that was really when we set out, that was part of our mission, was to say, hey, people need to realize how great, you might not appreciate, people who hunt or people who fish or people who bird watch or like insects, but you need to, because you're working towards the same stuff. What you're doing is exactly the same. You're just like, it was almost combative at times, where people who, I really like native plants because I like the plants, or I like the insects, but those people who hunt, no, they're no good. And, well, you're doing the same things. The National Wild Turkey Federation and Ducks Unlimited were buying the same exact plants as the Xerxes Society and
Yeah.
like Sauerlands Conservancy, they're buying the same stuff for the same purposes. They want to create healthy habitats.
Yeah,
They were doing the exact same things, but they would sometimes battle with each other because they didn't like the ideology behind what they were doing.
Yeah, and so much of my professional growth has really accelerated because of the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Had we done it 5 years ago, I can't imagine, because I look back and I'm like, all this time, like, you have influence. I wish I would have been a better advocate for some of
Mhm.
these things
Yeah.
10 years ago, 12 years ago, and I'm happy that we've reached the point where we're at, but I agree with you. Had
Yeah.
we done it 5 years ago,
Yeah.
imagine what we could accomplish.
Yeah, that's, I guess, what I wish I did different was I wish instead of saying, hey, this is a guy who has a podcast about somewhere in the sphere of native plants,
Yeah.
or even just plants in general and creating habitat, I would like to be a guest on his podcast, but I'm too humble to say, hey, you should have me as a guest. I wish I just said, why don't we start our own podcast and have these same conversations,
Yeah.
except we're driving it.
And if you've listened to us from the beginning, like, there's a big difference between episode 1 and episode 62. And I don't know that we would have been qualified to have, I know Bowman's Hill came later on and we planned to have them earlier, but it was a much better
Mhm.
episode that we had it now than had we had it a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So it's like you're getting to witness our growth as well.
Oh yeah.
As we're doing
Mhm.
this. So it's I look forward to 5 years from now.
Yep.
So cool.
So-
Cool. I think
All
that
right.
wraps it up.
Yeah, so that is it. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants, Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
As always, thank you to RJ Comer for our Buzz theme music. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you consume your music. Follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, or Native Plants _Healthy Planet, and YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Keep calling the question and comment line at 215-346-6189. I will repeat that, 215-346-6189. Ask a question, leave a comment. We'll play it on a future episode of The Buzz. And don't forget the Facebook group, because we want to hear all your suggestions of your favorite natural places, and we need you to vote
Yes.
for either one. I'm not even
Yeah.
saying for me. I'm just saying, just vote. Just vote.
We want you to vote for who actually did the better job presenting their article.
I think I would have been less bitter had you won like 30-19.
Yeah,
I would have been less like it still would have been a loss, but at least I would have felt better about it. So, but keep the conversation going there.
So we now have shirts. In fact, I'm
I'm
wearing
wearing it.
one, and we also have mugs.
I have my
Brian
mug.
has a mug. We actually had a request if we're going to release hats, and that is something we're working on. The platform we're using, this Spring or Teespring, whatever it's called, that platform it's a little more difficult to launch hats, but it's something I'm working on. So we should have them up soon.
I would have worn one of my shirts, but they came in yesterday, and when you're getting it, make sure you wash it. There's a strong vinegar scent that I think is part of the process of putting the
logo on and all that.
Yeah, so
yeah, I have the one.
I didn't get a chance to wash it.
Native Plants, Healthy Planet on the front, and then on the back it says buzzing about native plants, and it's got all insects on there. Not just insects. There's a spider on there as well.
Ooh.
So and 100% of the proceeds from that go to support the Xerxes Society. So we have like that one, and then there's another one for New Jersey Audubon, and that goes directly to them. The rest of them are kind of get lumped into a general fund that we're gonna to donate as we see fit to these organizations that we've had on.
And as soon as we do, we'll let you know.
Yeah, so that's going really great. I know a lot of people are putting up in the group. They got their shirts.
I can't wait to wear
Noelle,
mine.
who works here, she got her shirt, and
Yeah.
before we even got our shirt, and
Yeah.
we ordered them at the same time, or even before.
Yeah.
the sample ones we get take a little bit longer,
Yeah.
I guess.
So I'm looking forward to wearing mine on a future episode.
But yeah, so we'll just if you're interested in the shirts, please go on there, because it's really going to a good cause, and is basically going to get more native plants out there.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Totally.
So, you can listen to Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. You can also check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really wherever you consume your podcasts. When you're there, please do us a favor, subscribe, leave a review, like we just got the 2 new ones, which goes a long way towards helping us go up in the basically how it works is the more reviews we get, the more subscribers we get, it gets us higher in the rankings. The higher we are in the rankings, the higher we show on when you go to Apple Podcasts or your podcast
nature.
driver,
Yeah.
and you search nature, you search for native plants, we'll show up higher in that ranking.
Yeah.
That's why it's really, I haven't figured out the formula, but that's what I figured out is that goes a long way.
Yeah, if your listens go up every month, but you're not getting new subscribers or new reviews, then you go down actually in the rating. So you have to kind of have all those three things happening, not just one of them. So, but that's how you get the circle bigger. The more people see us, the more we can grow.
And typically I say, share this with a friend. I'm going to tell you to go one step further. Grab your friend's phone and hit subscribe on their phone for us as well. Cause that's what really makes
that helps.
We want more people using native plants. One way to do that is by spreading our message a little bit further.
Totally.
And that's how you can help us.
Totally. So it's secret time, right?
Yes,
And it's my turn now. Deborah Rosenthal said last time that I glazed over the fact when I was saying how my nose was broken, that I kind of glazed over that I got punched, and she wanted to hear the story. And
it was a good story.
Yeah, I didn't tell it yet.
It's something that should be told.
And it's a good story. And it's at first when I thought about it, I was like, I was 10, not a big deal. But then after I said it out loud, I'm like, that's interesting. But I'm not going to share that today because that's a longer story. And we went a little bit further than normal. But in talking with Agatha the other day, we were talking about pools. And I never said this out loud, even though I have a fear of diving boards, like a legit fear. Like, you're not getting me on a diving board. And I have some really weird phobias. Like, I almost drowned as a kid. And then my parents made me take, like, I was 7 at the time. And they made me take swimming lessons for like the next 10 years, like where I became a lifeguard. And, and it was back in the 70s when I couldn't swim across the deep end. And the swimming instructor put me in the deep end and told my parents to go home and said, I'm not calling your parents to pick you up until you can swim across the deep end. Like, I thought I was going to drown. And my parents were just sitting in the parking lot in their car. But I remember swimming across, getting out of the pool and running through the hallways yelling for my mom and dad. But I was at a pool once and I saw a guy jump, but he didn't jump out far enough. And he scraped his entire spine on the diving board on the way down. And the pool kind of filled with blood and they had to call an ambulance. And ever since then, you cannot get and at swimming lessons, like, we were being taught how to dive. And ever since then, I've been on a diving board once just to show my kids it was okay. But I literally walked out to the end and just jumped off.
Yeah.
But like, I won't go on a small, like, backyard pool diving, but like, I won't, as soon as I get near it, I'm like, well, what if I slip or what if I jump too early? Like, it's a legit, I don't know. I got this weird phobia with it now.
I'm trying to look up if that actually has a name.
Oh, all right. I'm curious.
I don't know if there's many other well, no, there's a whole bunch of videos of people of what seems looks like toddlers who are all afraid of diving boards. But no, I can't see that it has a dive for Nobia.
Okay.
There's no phobia name.
The thing is, I've known my whole life, but never said it to anyone or never really acknowledged it until I went to tell Agatha that I was like, wow, I actually have a fear that, like, it's not something I would have ever have even thought of.
Oh, wait. I think it is similar. Catapetophobia is the fear of jumping off high and low places, and usually is associated with acrophobia, which is the fear of heights.
Wow. Okay. So, heights don't bother me.
And it's the common trigger is getting injured from jumping off a platform like a diving board.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, like this guy got messed up. Like, he didn't like, it's not like he was paralyzed or anything. It just scraped the skin like off his back. Like, I remember seeing him because they had to carry him out of the pool and all that. And it was pretty traumatic as a kid because everyone had to get out of the pool because the water was red. So ever since then, that kind of killed my dreams of being an Olympic diver.
So with that, thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode for a rooted discussion that is already confirmed. So we know it's going to be a rooted discussion. So we're excited to bring this one to you. We've had this one in the works for a while, so it's finally coming to fruition. So we'll see you on that one. Thank you again. And until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.